APEC members at loggerheads over how fast to proceed with a new round of global trade talks will be speaking to US Trade Representative Charlene Barshefsky. Japan's economy struggles to emerge from a decade-long slump. We'll have an exclusive interview with Japanese Prime Minister Yoshihiro Mori. And Brunei moves to diversify away from oil and turn itself into an international financial hub. Welcome to this APEC 2000 special from Brunei. I'm Stuart Pallister. The hot topic at this year's summit was trade liberalisation. But while member countries agreed on the need for a new round of WTO trade talks, there was no consensus on an agenda or a time frame. After 2 days of meetings, leaders of Asia-Pacific nations found more uniformity than just their blue silk shirts provided by their hosts. At their retreat at the Jerodong Polo Club, they managed to agree on a call for all World Trade Organization members to set a balanced and broad-based agenda that will be finalized as early as possible in 2001. A new round of trade talks will also be launched next year. The agreement came despite Malaysian opposition at ministerial meetings earlier in the week.
If you want to have a new round, you must have an agenda to discuss upon which the new round is to be made, but now there's no agenda. So I'm saying instead of pressing for a new round, press for the date to resolve an agenda.
Also in the communique, a call for China and Taiwan's quick entry into the WTO, speedy negotiations to allow Russia and Vietnam to join the trade body, appropriate measures to ensure stable oil prices, and moves to enable people in APEC countries to have access to the internet by 2010. APEC leaders also welcomed Japan's offer of an aid package worth about $15 billion to narrow the digital divide. But that aside, this year's meeting could be called a gathering of embattled leaders. One's facing impeachment, others seem to be hanging on to office by the skin of their teeth. This year's summit also happens to be the last for US President Bill Clinton, the man who turned the grouping into a high-powered meeting ground. Now, after 7 years, there are fears that the Pacific Rim group may not survive his departure due to deep divisions within the grouping. Many of APEC's critics have also questioned the need for an annual ritual that costs tens of millions of dollars. Some believe APEC's power, though, lies in its sheer size. It groups 21 economies with about 2/3 of the world's population, 60% of its output, and almost half of the world's trade. And so diversity is hardly a surprise. One of the most vocal proponents of a new round of global trade talks was the US Trade Representative Charlene Barshefsky. I caught up with her in Brunei and began by asking her about the WTO and the new economy.
The Information Technology Agreement is an important example, but not the only example. This was an agreement that eliminates global tariffs in information technology products, from computers and phones and faxes to integrated circuits and semiconductors and everything in between. It was APEC that put that agreement together. It was APEC that brought it to the WTO. The APEC countries have done the same kind of work on the proposition that there should be duty-free cyberspace. That is, that there should not be duties on electronic transmissions on the net to help ensure that e-commerce flows and develops as a mode of trade.
In terms of telecoms, Japan does seem to be making some moves to open up its telecom sector. Do you think they are going far enough?
No. As you know, we've worked very hard with Japan under our deregulation initiative to open up their telecoms sector, including the lowering substantially of NTT's interconnection fees, so as to engender greater competition in the Japanese market among services providers. In addition, of course, opening up the investment regime, welcoming new competitive energy in the market. We don't believe Japan has moved quickly enough. We do believe, however, that they are moving. I think we've had some success under our deregulation initiative, but certainly to remain a top-notch competitive force Japan is going to have to open that telecom market. It's going to have to engender greater and greater competition in that market, and that is going to mean that outside vendors, outside services suppliers are going to have ever-increasing access to that market at reasonable rates.
On China's WTO membership drive, is it on course?
I think it is on course. Certainly, the speed with which China finalizes its work in Geneva depends largely on China, just as the speed with which it concluded its bilateral agreements depended largely on China. The rest of the world is happy to move, willing to move as fast as China is, but I do think we're making some good progress in Geneva. There is more progress to be made, however, and we shall see how quickly it goes. But I do think it is fair to say the accession is very much on track.
Coming up after the break, Japan's Prime Minister Yoshihiro Mori struggles with a still fragile economy, low popularity ratings, and dissent within the ruling LDP. We'll have an exclusive interview after the break. Welcome back. After a decade-long slump, Japan's economy is set to grow, but it won't be spectacular growth at just under 2%. Still, much needs to be done, but many doubt that Japan's Prime Minister Yoshihiro Mori is the man to do it. In an exclusive joint interview with CNBC, Dow Jones Tokyo correspondent James Sims spoke with Mori in Brunei, and he began by asking him for his assessment of the economy.
From the start, our biggest concern has been corporate investment and private consumption. So in order to support these two areas, we have been providing fiscal support through aggressive stimulus measures. This year, corporate earnings will be quite good. But in the industrial sector, there are companies that had been able to get on the IT bandwagon in their strategies, and others who have not been able to. Also in Japan, there are a lot of small and medium-sized company owners, and among those, the ratio of those losing their business is quite high. So this is a very big factor of concern. So going into the new businesses, from the old economy to the new economy, we see that the jobless rate has increased. Meanwhile, the corporate self-sustaining recovery is continuing, and the gradual recovery is continuing. But my greatest area of concern is the household spending area. Consumption has been going in fits and starts. So now, in the current session of Parliament, we are deliberating an extra budget for the year 2000 and want to pass this in order to ensure that there is a switch to a private demand-led recovery.
What are your expectations for fiscal and monetary policy from now on?
You know, our fiscal situation is very severe. Fiscal structural reform is something we must do. During the former Prime Minister, Keizo Obuchi administration, our primary concern was to get the economy on a recovery path. And considering in the future we would have to have fiscal reform, we decided that it was important to increase the transparency and effectiveness of fiscal policies. Once we have reached a self-sustaining economic recovery, we would like to make broad-ranging fiscal reforms, including the tax system, the health and welfare system, and the relationship between the regional and national government. However, our basic stance is that we must first stabilize the economy and achieve recovery.
Do you think that the discussions among the leaders here at the APEC meeting will help launch a new WTO round?
Regarding a new WTO round, we must avoid a delay, as it could undermine the confidence in the world body. In the ministerial meetings, I understand there was much discussion on this. As much as possible, I believe that we should continue work to promote an early start of the round that everyone would be interested in. I hope that other leaders share this idea, so that I can call for a discussion that will result in efforts by APEC economies to work for an overall consensus within the WTO.
What are the causes of the recent political instability in Japan, including the comments by Mr. Kato? Also, do you think that these problems will have any effect on policy?
The Parliament session from now on is very important. It's my responsibility to the people to see that by all means this political wrangling does not lead to a political vacuum. As I've said before, as I am president of the Liberal Democratic Party, it is obvious that I'm open to listen to others' opinions. And if there is a request from Kato, I have no qualms about meeting it.
Japanese Prime Minister Mori there in an exclusive interview with CNBC and Dow Jones. Coming up, we look at Brunei's bid to become an international financial hub, and we hear from HSBC Chairman David Eldon. That's after the break. Welcome back to this APEC 2000 special. Well, APEC has helped to put Brunei on the map, and the Sultanate is hoping to cash in by turning the country into an international financial center. Brunei's Sultan Hassan Al Bolkiah arrives to launch a new bank. Only it's not exactly a new bank as such. It's the Development Bank of Brunei, which has undergone some rebranding to stress its Islamic credentials.
We are confident that the Islamic way of doing business will be widely accepted by the world at large. This is so not only because it brings profits, but it also offers fairness and at the same time prevents exploitation.
Brunei feels it should be emphasizing its Islamic stature, and it's hoping to become a niche Islamic financial center.
Islamic financial institutions are looking for somewhere secure to go, and we've come on stream at just the right time.
Brunei may be oil rich, but it used to be relatively poor, highly dependent as it was on the exports of a dye used in the tanning of leather. Now it's looking to the future, and it believes that future lies with financial services. It's hoping to attract Islamic financial firms. That said, it won't just be an Islamic center. It says it will be taking a twin-pronged approach, as it also wants to attract conventional offshore banking. Officials say the Brunei model will be unique.
We are looking at a model that is halfway between Bahrain and somewhat relaxed versions of Singapore.
Well, Brunei is not quite like Singapore. At present, only a handful of banks operate here, but officials say Brunei's sleepy appearance can be deceptive. Much of the action is taking place behind closed doors. Here at the Finance Ministry, officials are planning the government's strategy to attract financial players. But they're not looking for pizzazz. Instead, they're taking a conservative approach to make sure they do it right.
We're not expecting overnight success, but at the same time, we intend to pursue vigorously, our agenda at making the jurisdiction a first-class jurisdiction which is innovative.
HSBC has been operating in Brunei for more than 50 years, but it's just opened its 11th branch here. This one's looking to work with small and medium-sized enterprises in the neighborhood. It may be a conventional bank, but it does have an Islamic division.
For the time being, international banks are restricted from offering Amanah Finance product domestically, and we respect that. It gives the local Islamic banks the opportunity to work with their local customer base.
HSBC, for one, is certainly taking Brunei's bid to become an offshore centre seriously. Officials here say several trust funds have already signed up, and many have shown interest. The Brunei authorities are currently putting the legislation in place. Officials say so far, so good.
We're not looking to attract the 200 biggest banks in the world.
Is this then an Islamic Bermuda in the making? Well, some believe this country, with its absolute monarchy, won't be taken seriously. Others argue that it's because of the absolute monarchy that Brunei will succeed. After all, they say it has political and economic stability. Officials say Brunei's image of being a safe haven should win out. At the very least, it should be an attractive tax haven, especially as it has a zero tax rate regime. Well, banking giant HSBC is on the expansion trail in Asia, and it's trying to increase its presence in Thailand, Indonesia, Taiwan and Korea, and that despite growing concern about the bank's bottom line. Well, CNBC's Maura Fogarty spoke with HSBC Chairman David Eldon and asked him about the bank's revenues.
We talk about Hong Kong and we look at the potential revenue streams that are going to be in Hong Kong. You're aware that the market is relatively quiet. There isn't a great deal of new lending. Therefore, revenues are going to be under pressure anyway because of the lack of lending. They're going to be under pressure now because of the interest rate deregulation. So the only thing, not the only thing, but one of the things that we can do is to look at our cost structure. The internet is going to help us there.
We've seen a lot of mergers in the global banking business recently, JP Morgan Chase being the last one. Does this put pressure on HSBC to do something similar?
I think, first of all, those mega banks have actually got to merge successfully. To be able to make the most of the merged entity. That sometimes takes time, and I think we will obviously try to take advantage of the time it's taking them to do that, and we're in the marketplace. The second thing, I think you raise a valid point. I think we're already pretty good in the marketplace. I think we're getting there much more than we have done in the past. But there is a case to be made maybe for the US market, where now we are beginning to look a little suboptimal compared to the other banks. No shopping list, but if an opportunity came up that looked attractive to us, to the shareholders, we would certainly have a look at it.
You have a partnership or an alliance right now with Merrill Lynch, which is very strong in the investment banking side. First of all, how is that partnership going?
That's going very well. We'll be rolling out the first phase of that in the United Kingdom, in Australia, and in Canada. hopefully during the course of the next, well, really now we're down to a few weeks.
The joint venture lasts about 2 years. Going further down the road, is there a possibility this partnership could develop into something a little bit closer, a full-fledged merger perhaps?
I think all I can say to that at the moment is that it is not even under discussion.
South Korea's Daewoo Motor has come screeching to a halt. Earlier this month, it was declared bankrupt, and now it's likely that only a takeover will save the brand, and General Motors is thought to be interested. Well, Maura Fogarty caught up with GM Asia President Rudolf Schleiss and asked him whether a takeover is on the cards.
Well, as I think we've said previously, we're continuing discussions, and at this point in time, that's about where it is.
So then, would you be interested in just buying parts of Daewoo Motor, just some of the assets, instead of the whole thing?
Well, I think that, very importantly, Daewoo Motor Company is an existing company, and to service the Korean market and other markets, it's very important that that the various parts of it be able to service those markets.
I'm sorry, I don't quite understand. Does that mean that you would not be interested in buying only
No,
parts?
I didn't say that. All I said was that we were looking at the company.
Okay, so that might possibly include only parts of the company as opposed to the entire company as we know it.
At this point in time, as I have said earlier in our letter of intent, we're studying to see what makes sense.
When do you see a conclusion then? Several weeks, several months from now?
Would you like to give me the crystal ball? We made an offer in December of last year. Okay, we made an offer in June. We have now once again started a letter of intent for discussions.
What's the sticking point? What's making the discussions so difficult?
Well, I think the status of the company at this point in time. We are not in negotiations. We are in discussions and examinations to see whether anything makes sense or not.
And that's it for this APEC 2000 special. I'm Stuart Pallister in Brunei. Thanks for watching.